Good morning, everyone. My name is Anna. This is Jess and Rob, and we're here today to talk about retention rates at the University of Rhode Island, to stay or not to stay. And to put our work in context, first we would like to talk a little bit about the bigger picture. Why are we here today? So it's 2016 electoral campaign. We have candidates such as Bernie Sanders talking about how the future of education can be found on free education, how this is possible based on European socialistic models. We have books being published about the University of Everywhere and how we're going to move towards online university. We also have politicians such as Gina Raimondo in Rhode Island. She's talking about Real Jobs Rhode Island. She created a plan addressing how there's a skills gap. We also have Ivy Leagues talking about what is actually the cost of college. We are all aware how there's a tuition bubble. Tuition prices are racing. And sadly, we also have students that are being affected by all these, and there's a rising issue of depression. So we're here today to talk about the future of education and why we think retention rates are very important. So because education is going to change so much and we are really unsure in what direction it's going to change, we think that URI should really worry about keeping students in school and improve their retention rates, so like maybe they won't opt to go to online universities. So to put this a little bit in context, we're going to talk about the class of fall 2012, and most of you, I'm going to assume, come from that class. That class had an incoming number of students of 2,980 full-time students, from which 52% were out of state and 48% were in state. So after the retention rate, URI for the following fall lost 557 students. So if we add up all the numbers and all the tuition that these students would have paid across all 3 years, this adds up to 34.8 million. So this is a really large number that URI is losing every single year. In addition, if we want to compare how URI is doing to other institutions, are we doing bad, are we doing not so good, we're mostly focusing on other New England land grants. And as you can see in the map, in the graph behind me, URI is not doing so well. URI is like the black bolded line, and we're behind UMass, UNH, UVermont, and UConn. So we really need some improvement here. As if this wasn't enough incentive for URI to focus on retention rates, the General Assembly of Rhode Island passed an act that's going to ask performance-based budgeting. It's going to be measured in 2016 and implementing in 2018, and this is going to measure the amount of students that are graduating, and URI will get funds based on this. So obviously retention rates and graduation rates go hand in hand. As students are leaving, those students are not graduating. So today we're going to focus on URI strategy. I'm going to talk about the TD program and financial need. Jess is going to talk about a program that's called G2C and academic coaching resources. And Rob is going to go over advising, LLCs, and our competition. So the Talent Development Program, it's a program that started at URI in 1968 to help Rhode Island residents, and across the years it's grown a lot. Now it has over 1,300 students. And this program focuses on students that come from disadvantaged backgrounds, and these usually nowadays tend to be minorities. When we examine the poverty rates in Rhode Island, we see that minorities are doing worse than those that are Caucasian. And if we look at the proportion of minorities in the TD program, it actually correlates very well. For example, like 40% of Hispanics in Rhode Island are poor, whereas 40% of students in TD, roughly 40%, are Hispanics. So we can see there's a nice correlation there. In addition, this program is going to achieve an increasing importance in URI, since there is, as you can see behind me, a growth in diplomas from minorities at Rhode Island. So as more minorities come to school, there's going to be more of these students that might be under the bridge of financial need. So the problem with TD is that some students, they get prepared over the summer. It's a summer program, and they're supposed to get ready for them to come to URI. They usually have very low SAT scores. And the problem is some advisors say that these TD students come and they really struggle, so maybe the summer program is not enough, maybe they were not fully prepared to college. So we're looking at what other land grants we're doing, and we found a very interesting program in Maine. It's called the TRIO programs, and this is a federal program that URI could actually apply to get funds from. And what it does is that it assists low-income individuals, and TD assists people that come from disadvantaged backgrounds, so they could be under the same umbrella. But they also have 2 additional programs that come under TRIO with the funding. As you can see them on the board, they have really long names. But basically what they do is that they focus on high school. So we could see a TD, it's kind of like a Band-Aid, but it's really not fixing the program since these students come into URI and they're really not prepared. Whereas if Rhode Island focused a little more on high schools, maybe these students could just off the bat get higher SAT scores and they could be more prepared for college or maybe get other students, go to other schools. And also these students have to go to a financial literacy workshop, which we thought it was very interesting. They get to learn about financial aid and how they could work with maybe their savings. So going off from this, if we focus a little bit on financial need, we interviewed Jane Richmond. She's the Dean of University College. And there's a quote up there. It says, if you want to improve retention rates dramatically, all you would have to do is raise tuition so that low-income students would not be able to attend school. So we focused on Pell Grants since they're need-based, so they reflect the need-based students. And we saw that there's a high correlation between the proportion of students that get Pell Grants and the retention rate. So the relation goes this way. So the higher the retention rate, the lower the proportion of students that have Pell Grants. So the higher the retention rate, the lower students that are financially in need. So this reflects how financial aid really affects retention rates. In addition, you can see in the back, Pell Grants are awarded to students that are in financial need, and they happen to also have lower SAT scores. So we see this pattern that students that are considered that need help are schools are basing it that their SAT scores are low. However, if we look at the retention rates, those students whose SAT scores were low, they still have the same retention rate as those who had higher SATs. You can see this in the graph behind me. The blue line is the retention rate of students who received Pell Grants, and the blue bars are the ones who didn't receive Pell Grants. So this either leaves us off with SATs are absolutely not an indicator, and we should look further, maybe just base it on financial aid and not on SATs to help these students. Or maybe these students, when they receive the financial need, are actually stable and they can focus in school. In this way, they can achieve better results and stay. So with this, I'm going to pass it on to Jess, and she's going to talk about other initiatives that URI has.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about Gateways to Completion, which is G2C, and like the SI, which stands for Supplemental Instruction Sessions, were born from different universities, including the University of Rhode Island, to help students and their performance when they're taking a high-risk course, when there's easy to fail. And the difference between G2C and SI is that SI focuses on the teaching, where the G2C focuses more on changing the teaching method so students would perform better. Some of these techniques were first evaluated or implemented by two URI professors called Professor Ramsey and Professor Fournier. They took the approach that students were going to be taking an individual test followed by a group test, and students were allowed to pick their own groups. After this, 6 students were interviewed, and they all agreed that this kind of test actually took some of the anxiety away from the test. After that, other professors actually also try to implement this kind of method. And for example, the nursing department, Professor Baisley is trying the same method. The only difference is that she is actually choosing the student groups. So after this, 2 of the students were interviewed, and they both agreed that they would have preferred to pick up their own groups because it is easier to, when you know the people you're working with, to choose the answer. So now I'm going to go ahead and talk about the academic coaching resources. URI has an academic learning center which can easily fulfill the needs of the students when they're trying to seek academic help. Given the need and financial resources needed to develop this kind of programs, URI is providing its best efforts to help all the students. URI offers this kind of academic resources and coaching resources available to all students, and they are free. All of them are coordinated by the Academic Enhancement Center. So information was measured to measure the results of this kind of programs. These sessions are carried out by student leaders. They are carried out bi-weekly to review everything that the students are learning in class. And they were being recorded by the amount of sessions they are assisting towards the grades that they're obtaining at the end of the course. So in figure 7, we can see here in this graph, the grade that students are receiving corresponding with the amount of sessions they are going to. So as we can see here, students who are receiving a grade from A to C plus are actually going to these sessions on a daily basis, when students that are receiving grades from D plus to lower are actually not going to these. And on the next graph, we can actually see the amount of sessions students are going to. Unfortunately, only 43.2% of the students who are enrolled in this high-risk courses actually enroll in these sessions, and only 4.7% of the students actually assist on a daily basis. The equivalent of URI's Academic Enhancement Center can be found all over New England's land-grant institutions. When we go ahead and compare them all, the University of Massachusetts has a program called LRC, which stands for Learning Resource Center, which is by far the best ones on all New England. Besides what URI offers to their students at the moment, they also have this program where students can go in the website and choose from the drop-down, which we have a screenshot right there if you guys can see it. Choose from that what kind of assistance they want. Most of the time students use this when they are in final exams, because most students don't realize they need help for a course until they are actually studying for a major test. So they can go over here, choose what kind of assistance they need, and go through it. Even though the URI can learn a lot from different institutions like UMass, they are having an effective program at the moment. And because some students don't actually know about these programs, they don't feel the need of going into them. So that's why we're going to go ahead, and that leads us to our next section that Rob's going to go ahead and expand on.
Thank you, Jess and Anna. So to go over, the Academic Center at URI is a valuable tool for student success. Is it the best though? Compared to our competitors, we decided to look at the 3 top New England colleges in the New England region to find out, is our academic center the best, or is there room for improvement? Our competitors that we decided to look at are University of Massachusetts, University of Connecticut, and University of New Hampshire. These 3 schools have the top retention rate and have the highest enrollment in the New England region. So the first one we'll look at is University of UMass. All right, at UMass, they have a 91% retention rate as of 2015. They have a required study hall for all freshmen incoming. This helps them focus on the academics at hand, also provides them on-time assistance with advising if needed. Also, in the study hall, is a writing center that's built into the study hall, where at URI it's a separate entity aside from the library or any study halls on campus. Also involved is Maroon Connections, which is currently a student-athlete integration for career development. So seminars are based on the level of student that is at UMass, freshman, sophomore, etc. Each year that the student continues to grow, they have different seminars based on the level of that student. Seminars can range from resume and cover letter workshops. They can lead to major field seminars if somebody is unsure which major they want to continue with. They also help career building and networking. It comes useful when you graduate and move on into the professional field. Also, they have mock interviews if needed, if they're interested. Currently, like I said, it's at a student-athlete level, but we believe this program has the flexibility to branch out into other students as well. Next university we'll look at is UConn. UConn has a 92% retention rate as of 2015. They have an online financial literacy program for all students, not required, but they encourage an online financial literacy program for students to learn about the different products when it comes to education loans, lines of credit, to get them more involved in learning about the effects if they are abused or if they tend to overstretch themselves with, as people know, with tuition costs. And as our fellow peers will bring up later, it'll be a student loan bubble. Also, they have appointed advisors. If a student is struggling, UConn will appoint an advisor to that student to follow up with them throughout the semester and give an evaluation report. It's a one-on-one contact. They can work with the student and find out any gaps in learning they have, or any concerns they have as far as going forward with their academic career. University of New Hampshire has a 86% retention rate. As of 2015, they have the CFAR, which is the Center for Academic Resources, which is similar to URI. The difference being that they're more organized when compared to URI. They're more career driven. They have more professional outlets when it comes to graduation. These outlets will actually come in handy to go out into the real world. And they have internships that are, like I said, more organized. They get the student prepared through putting their name out there to have the possibility of being hired prior to graduation, or at the time of graduation, they have more of a possibility of being hired because they've gone through the internship program. Now with advising, the NSE did a survey of students on URI, freshmen and seniors. From the survey, 36% of freshmen said that they were getting little to no help from the advisors on campus and faculty. 52% of seniors said the same. So we decided to dig deeper and say, what do we know? According to the survey, students say that the advisors aren't giving them the full information. Personally, I didn't know about the Writing Center until a year ago. I've been here for 4 years. Stuff like that comes up, that the students are talking back, giving feedback, saying that they need more assistance from their advising group. Not to say it's all advisors, but some maybe need to give a little bit more encouragement. This also falls on the part of the student where, from an advisor perspective, the student has to take the initiative to go out to that advisor and ask for help if needed. Also, poor availability. The student to faculty ratio of URI is 16 to 1, which is third highest in the New England region behind UConn and UMass, who has a 17 to 1 ratio. It's only a student more on the ratio, but given the fact that UConn and UMass have such a higher enrollment, and we have the third highest in the region, it seems like the availability needs to be, it's tough to create availability for the advisors to see all the students as necessary. So that tends to let some students fall by the wayside. And restricted system access. With the systems in place, the URI advisement is an outdated tool which links eCampus and Sakai for the students' reference when it comes to advising. It's not really user-friendly. It doesn't give you the full options that some systems out there, some programs that are out there. URI has taken the initiative to go out and look for a program that would benefit them, which leads us to the Starfish program. Now, with the Starfish program is a retention program to help develop and coordinate and facilitate advisors to meet the student need. Now, with an approved system, they can make schedules, follow up, better tracking, workflow will be better for the advisors and the students together, so they can combine and they can work together to meet the needs. And there's two programs, one being Connect, which develops the scheduling system for the advisors and creates more of a process flow, a process improvement for getting the scheduling more robust, more user-friendly when it comes to, and point of reference, we go back to the slide at the LRC with the UMass, something similar to that where you had multiple options instead of just 2 or 3. You can schedule your meetings with the advisor and have actually a one-on-one talk with the advisor. And also another product is the Early Alert. The Early Alert is a tracking program, a tracking product for the advisors to, and the faculty and the instructors to say, this student is having issues in this class. These are the issues that they're having in this class. We need to reach out to the student and find out what we can do for this student. It sends back a signal, pretty much an alert back to the faculty member and says, you might want to take a look at the student and find out, does he need help? And for a success story, Nebraska-Lincoln has an enrollment of 20,000 plus. So we decided to look at this success story because it falls in the range of the New England region between UMass, UConn, and URI, and UNH. And their success story was they wanted to improve retention rates from 2014 to 2017, improve it from 64% to 70%. They enlisted in the Starfish program, and currently they're at 68% with an increase of 270 appointments over average that they were getting before. So this is a success story that we can look at, we can gauge against, and find out if will it benefit URI. All right, live and learn communities are academic communities built within the university. They house and board and keep academics within the majors for those students. So, i.e., example would be economic students will be boarded and have the same academics as other students. So it'll be a group that pretty much goes throughout the whole 4 years in this community. Since 2003, it's actually grown in popularity. A lot of South and Western universities have used it, have had some very fair success with it. It's an option that right now URI is currently involved in, and I'll get to that later. The academic interaction between the students will be at a greater level based on the fact that they're seeing the same group of students. They can interact with each other. They can use each other as tutors if necessary. They can fall back on each other to help each other out. Also, a social interaction will be an improvement as well. You get across the same group of students, you create better relationships, you create better friendships, and you can kind of build your academic and build out your learning experience all around. And this comes to URI. So URI currently has LLCs in nursing, pharmacy, and engineering. It's based on, per Jane Richmond, it's based on the college level. So each college has to make up their own LLC. It's not university-based, and it has to have some sort of backing to go through with developing an LLC. All right, and key points. Retention is a key point. Persistence is on advisor and student level to work together to create, going forward, to stay with their learning. Awareness for the advisors to know when a student is struggling to help them along and develop them. Action to help to create a plan to develop what to do with the awareness once they know that a student is struggling, and to help them along with their development. And our future at URI is to bring everything together as far as institutionalize, focus on the institution to develop their plan to create and increase retention rates to keep our students here. And our peers later on throughout these presentations will discuss how other factors matter to the students. But from an institution standpoint, retention is a high demand on the future of URI. Okay. Did I get 30 seconds?
Got it.
Did I get like 32?
Good afternoon. We're here to talk to you about the higher education bubble. I'm Jameson Fletcher. This is Ryan Coburn and Sarah Camara. We found many parallels between the higher education bubble and the housing bubble, and would like to direct your attention to them. The first one is the Community Reinvestment Act and the Higher Education Act. Both of these acts were enacted in order to give the opportunity to low-income borrowers to put people in homes and to put people in education, and they ended up channeling billions of dollars into both the higher education and the housing markets, and essentially distorted the natural dynamics of the markets by giving cheap credit to everyone and making these investments more available. The second parallel are the debt servicers, Fannie Mae and Sallie Mae. So Fannie Mae is currently setting the stage for a repeat of 2007 by forcing banks to lend to more high-risk borrowers. And they have no cash reserves, so in the event that delinquencies increase, they're not prepared for it. Sallie Mae is financed by taxpayers, and at the same time, they receive a commission on the debt from the student loans that they service. Since they've been privatized, Sallie Mae has faced class action lawsuits pretty much every year for predatory and fraudulent practices. In 2007, Moody's downgraded about 399 bonds backed by subprime mortgages, which together totaled $5.2 billion. Last year, Moody's put $3 billion worth of student loan asset-backed securities on watch for downgrade based on the likelihood of default. Mortgage-backed securities were considered a primary cause of the recession by many, and because of high demand, student loan asset-backed securities give lenders incentive to create loans which the students will never be able to pay back, and they also manipulate the repayment schedules so that it takes longer for them to make their repayments so that the interest accrues and they can make more profit. Current loan-to-value ratios are a powerful predictor of home losses, regardless of borrower types. So we looked at debt-to-earnings ratios for students as a predictor of their labor market outcomes. Based on increasing costs of tuition relative to income, and also projections about the future unemployment and underemployment of students, we believe this ratio will increase sharply over the next few years like it did in the Great Recession. Now, when the housing bubble popped, a crisis which could have been contained morphed into a much larger problem because it had not been anticipated by policymakers. In the for-profit sector, we found evidence of a crisis, and while the government has put some restrictions on this sector, there is a potential for it to turn into a much more systemic problem because the reaction time has been very slow, and the policymakers haven't put very strict limitations on this sector, and they continue to extend financial aid to colleges which have been flagged for problems. So at the peak of the housing bubble, about 14% to 17% of subprime mortgages were in default. The default rate for student loans has risen from 23% to 27% when you include all of the student loans that are at risk of default for being in income-based repayment programs, deferral programs, forbearance, which essentially allow these students to make payments of zero while still accruing interest on the loans. So over time, it would become more difficult for them to pay them off. And some even report that 40% of students are not making payments on their loans at this time. We expect the current default rate to increase or remain the same over the next decade based on projections by the Treasury Borrowing Advisory Committee, which would mean that at least $1 trillion in student loans could default in the next 10 years. So if you take a look at this graph, it's the St. Louis Fed Financial Stress Index. And you'll see in the period from 2003 to 2006, there was a period of very high complacency, and there was a surge of people writing, basically trying to debunk the people who were saying we're in a housing bubble. And we found that this is a very good indicator that the bubble's reaching its maturity. So if you look at the period from 2011 to 2015, you'll see that we've reached historically high complacency levels. And there is a surge in literature trying to debunk the higher education bubble hypothesis that rivals the amount that we've seen in the higher education, in the housing bubble. They all use very similar circular logic, and they make very superficial arguments without really going into too much detail about the problem. And with that, I'll pass it off to Ryan.
How's everybody doing today? So for today, I'm going to be talking about the housing bubble, and I'm going to go into greater detail about the housing bubble and going to go parallel with the student loan bubble, which is what our topic is about. So to start this whole presentation, as we can see here, is the global unemployment rates. And the reason why this is so important is because if this doesn't change anytime soon, then what will happen is that the student loan debt will grow, and it will cause more students to pay more than what they're paying for now. It's very important to understand the parallels between the housing bubble and the student loan bubble. And if this doesn't change anytime soon, like if you look here, like there wasn't that much change up until when the recession came, and that's when the recession began to increase, but I'm going to also move on to the next one, which is the prime and subprime loans. As you can see here, I'm going to go over the net percentage of the prime mortgage loans and the net percentage of the subprime mortgage loans. And you could see like the slope of change, like from the beginning of the recession to the end of it in 2012, where it's changed dramatically. But it's important that we focus on the mortgage loan, since it has a large contribution to what we know about the housing bubble. And now I'm going to go into the defaults in the housing market and higher education, which this is important because if something doesn't change anytime soon, then there won't be that. I'm going to pass it on to Sarah, actually.
Tuition at for-profit post-secondary institutions have been rising at a rapid rate, and that's what I'm going to talk about. The main target for these recruitments are minorities, low-income students, and veterans, as well as being targets for for-profit schools. The people that fit the demographics are being targeted by corporate lenders like Sallie Mae. So together, the schools and the lenders entice unsuspecting students into large amounts of debt that they're not qualified for. The cumulative student loan debt has been building for years, and now it's at a sum of $1.4 trillion. The debt is unsustainable due to the wages and medium income earning, and you can see that right behind me. The target of the low income earning people, they're being targeted by both private lenders and for-profit institutions, as I said. The private lenders, they are making a profit from selling slabs. So those are student loan asset-backed securities. And they're sold to other companies, and the new company that takes charge of it is in charge of collecting the debt. So in my paper, I described that it was a form of outsourcing. The private lenders have been known to offer more money than the student needs, and sometimes they do it without consulting the institution. Institutions have been aggressively recruiting low-income students. Examples would be the University of Phoenix and Corinthian colleges. They overactively seek low-income students, hoping to profit from the aid provided by the government. They have even resorted to ruthlessly recruiting homeless people, as well as illegally using government seals to promote their institution. In some cases, they send void checks through the mail to get people's attention, just things like that. So this graph shows the growth rate of the student debt. So it's growing at a rate of 17% right now, and it's projected to reach $12 trillion if the growth rate remains the same by 2030. If we continue with the same labor market, defaults would be a third of that. So defaults would be about a third of that, as I said. So it would be like $3 trillion. So in sum, we believe that there must be an intervention in the market of higher education. The distortion caused by government programs aimed at helping low-income people obtain a home and obtain education have been boomeranged on both cases. And this puts many in the situation where they're worse off than they were before. All the risks involved with these lending practices would fall 100% on the taxpayers if the Department of Education does not anticipate the risk. So overall, we're just saying that there should be some serious considerations that should be given to stopping the over-expansion of the credit in these markets. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Zach, and these are my colleagues. We have Mike to the right of me, then we have Rich, and then we have Gio. Today we're going to be discussing the unsustainability of college tuition and the viable options to cut these rising costs. It is our opinion that the current model of education is dying and needs to be critiqued. So given this point, I will first be evaluating the current model of education by looking at its concepts, evaluating tuition compared to real median family income, and commenting on the trend of this unsustainable path. Secondly, Rich will discuss the concept of self-paced learning, introduce Southern New Hampshire University, and provide a sensible solution to the unsustainability of college tuition relative to enrollment. After Rich, Mike will introduce the concept of massive open online classes, the different types of them, and how they are being utilized at Arizona State University. Last but not least, we will have Gio discuss online versus face-to-face learning and the success of online learning in the programs of nursing, special education, and statistics. At the end of our presentation, it is our goal to convey that the overarching future of higher education needs to be remodeled and made more sustainable. So let's first take a look at the factors contributing to the rising cost of college. Gregory Mankiw is an American macroeconomist from the prestigious Harvard University. He's authored numerous books and articles relating to neoclassical economics, and you have probably bought one of his textbooks in your lifetime. He attributes three main reasons to the rising cost of college tuition, and these are Baumol's cost disease, the rise in inequality, and price discrimination. So Baumol's cost disease. Society is basically overall wealthier than it was back in the day. So this implies that there is a higher standard of living. So that being the case, colleges can charge more because of this higher standard of living. In layman's terms, basically, it means as productivity increases, wages will increase, making it more expensive to produce these goods. The second reason for the rise in college tuition is because of rising inequality. Colleges have to increase the price of their tuition to offset this inequality. Colleges have to hire skilled workers to produce the next generation of skilled workers, and in essence, this concept keeps contributing to the increase in price of college tuition. Our third reason for the rising cost of college, according to Mankiw, is because of price discrimination. Price discrimination allows colleges to charge more based on consumers' willingness to pay. This allows certain colleges to charge more, given less. And in essence, Mankiw believes that we can hope for future technologies to reduce the cost of college education, but regardless, the system of education needs to be critiqued. Now we'll talk about real median household income. Real median household income is the average amount Americans made after taxes in a given year. This data is taken directly from the United States Census Bureau, and I will now show you a graph of it in 2014 dollars. So here's a graph of the real median household income in the United States from 1984 to 2014. And like I said previously, it is in 2014 dollars. On the y-axis, we have the value, and then on the x-axis, we have the years stemming from 1984 to 2014. So in the year 1985, the real median household income was $49,000, and then it increased to $57,724 in the year 2000, and now the most recent figure comes from the year 2014, and that was $53,657. So this leads us to ask, what is this spent on? What does the average American spend their income on? So consumer expenditures shows what the average family spends in a given year, and this is published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So in 2014, the income was $53,495, and $6,759 of that was spent on food, $17,798 was spent on shelter, and $9,073 was spent on transportation. So in essence, this leaves us only $3,744 to spend on other things. Where's my pie chart? So is this enough? Probably not even close. So let's take a look at the New England public institutions to get a better sense of how much a public institution will cost in New England. So first I'll look at in-state tuitions for the University of Rhode Island and the University of Maine. This graph shows these tuition prices from the year 2012 to 2016, and in the blue we have the URI's in-state tuition, which is $13,000 in 2015 to 2016, and $27,000 for out-of-state. And for the University of Maine, we have $11,000 for in-state and then $27,000 out-of-state, which would be in purple. So let's compare this to private institutions in New England. So for private institutions, they receive no aid from states. So generally speaking, their tuition has to be a lot higher. So on this graph, I've depicted Brown University, Dartmouth, Harvard, and Yale. And on average, from the year 2015 to 2016, tuition there was $45,000. So it is absolutely a lot more expensive than public institutions around then. So tuition, it basically is absolutely unreachable given this income. So given all this information, is this trend sustainable? Absolutely not. Real median family income is declining while public and private tuition is rising. And this can't happen for tuition to be sustainable. And now I will hand it off to Rich to talk more about a potential solution in self-paced learning.
All right. Thanks, Zach. Hello, everyone. Today, I'll be taking a closer look into the idea of the rapidly growing approach to learning, which is self-paced learning. Just a quick overview of it. I will do so today by describing the 4 controls of self-paced learning, which are also considered the 4 pillars of the idea. I will also take a closer look at evaluating competing higher education institutions and how they are making self-paced learning a key component of their curriculums. I'll take a close look at SNU, who is currently the leader in self-paced learning over the last 3 years. So the 4 pillars, the first one is environment. According to self-paced learning, SPL for short, according to SPL expert Dr. McGill, 75% of learning is affected by the environment. So certain factors include climate, neighboring students who are also doing what you're doing as well, temperature, sounds, and other distractions. What SPL does is that it takes you out of a fixed learning environment, such as a classroom, and gives you the liberty to learn in an environment of your choosing. So this includes like libraries, like your local Panera Bread, Starbucks, at home, in bed, patio, park, etc., anywhere that you feel comfortable to learn effectively. The second one is timing. This is very important, as we all know, as graduating seniors, the timing of how you learn. What SPL does is that it eliminates the constraint of being in a classroom for X amount of hours for a Y amount of weeks during a semester. SPL allows you to control the timing of your learning at a time that's best for you, given other constraints like work and family, etc. The next one is speed. Whether you're a fast learner or a slow learner, SPL will adjust relative to your speed. The beauty of it is that you can move on to the subsequent material whenever you're ready. And if you're a slow learner, like I'm a slow learner, you can take more time with certain material if you need to. And last but not least, and the most important, is the conditioning of the learning. So what it does is that conditioning allows you to pick how the material is delivered. So examples of it would be audio recordings, video lectures, worksheets, PowerPoint slides, and interactive assignments. So we've seen a lot of this during our curriculum here, which includes like the Cengage activities you do, Pearson, Aplia, Wiley Plus, and Sapling. These are all different factors of the conditioning of self-paced learning. All right, so like any new idea, everyone's trying to make it their own. So there are about 9 top institutions right now who are trying to really take a grasp on self-paced learning. Just a few of them are the University of Wisconsin, the heavily advertised University of Phoenix, Capella University, Western Governors University, Kaplan, Northeastern, Northern Arizona, as I mentioned, SNU, and last but not least, ASU. So right now, at the moment, the leaders are these 4 right here, the University of Wisconsin, SNU, Western Governors, and NAU. So of these 4, there can only be one who's really dominated the self-paced learning concept, and that is Southern New Hampshire University. So a quick little background of Southern New Hampshire University. It's formerly known as New Hampshire College. Over the last 3 years, SNU has experienced very dramatic growth in fall enrollment. For example, in the fall of 2012, the undergraduate enrollment was 11,110. The fall after that, it grew to 18,083, and by the fall of 2014, it has increased almost double to 29,350. This imputes a 164% increase in just 3 years. So SNU Online is the program that has generated all this increase in enrollment. So what they're really focusing on is targeting a particular market that most schools don't. So SNU is targeting the group of people that lost their jobs and had to quit school from the 07 and 08 recession. Unlike URI and like University of Wisconsin, they usually go after their main target are college seniors. So a big factor, unlike the other online schools, is that SNU has a very wide range of areas of study. So some of them include business administration, which is their most popular one, nursing, engineering, criminal justice, mathematics, poli-sci, psych, continuing education, just to name a few. All right, so a big factor in this is that within each area of study, there's more focuses. So if you take criminal justice, for example, they have 6 different majors within that for an online school. So that includes corrections, criminology, human services, legal studies and advocacy, police administration, and operations. I want to talk a little bit about SNU's backup support program. So Barack Obama has a very, very strong support system behind SNU and schools alike. So as a part of his plan for higher education, Obama stated the following: SNU gives course credit based on how well students master material. Therefore, you finish faster and you save money. This is important because he also, I believe one of his colleagues of the Secret Service has multiple children who are in SNU's program, so he can see firsthand the success that the program has had. So to better understand this is to look at the curriculum for each school. So if you take URI, for example, your curriculum for the core classes of econ looks something like this. So you take 201, take a break. 202, and then you have summer break. You come back, you take a harder course from a longer break, take a break. You have, these are your intermediate level courses, in your economic theory courses. You take these, you take a break. You might have a 300 level elective on the way, you take a break. You take 445, and then you end up here. So what I want to bring your attention to is this right here. So right after 201, you take a break.
Reg, you went right through my minute and 30 seconds.
All right.
Wrap it up.
All right. So what SNU wants to do is to do this and get rid of the elapsed time in between. So I got to kind of breeze through this. So this could be potential options for you. For some people, you can do this. Good luck to you. For others, you can do this. So this is a quick graph of the growth in enrollment for SNU. As you can see, it's been dramatically increasing over the last 3 years. And this is the percentage of students that have been leaving online classes. URIs has been going up, and SNUs has been going down. So us up here, we're not in online classes. We fall in that 4% category. I will now pass it over to Mike, who will consider MOOCs as an alternative.
All right. So MOOCs are massive open online classes. Were created in 2008 and took off on a more wide scale in 2012 and became known within the academic community. They're basically fully accessible online classes which hundreds of thousands of students can take a virtual classroom and be taught by prestigious professors. Doing my research, there are hundreds of MOOC providers that offer these courses, but the three top are main providers that are kind of leading the way in innovation technology is Udacity, created by Stanford University, EDX, created by Harvard and MIT, and Coursera, which was created by Daphne Koller, who earned her doctorate in computer science from Stanford University. So I found some interesting data on the growth of MOOCs since their creation. I decided to kind of condense it to the more substantial growth that they saw. So from August 2013 to June 2014, they saw a 200% increase in the amount of MOOCs that were created. So it goes to show you, kind of the possibility that they're growing in popularity, and the more variety that students can, or the more variety that they can take as far as these MOOC classes. So Lake Rich, centered around Southern New Hampshire for self-paced learning. I looked at Arizona State University, kind of because of the development of the MOOC, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So from Best Review College, and a website that involves ranking college based off of certain criteria, they had Arizona State ranked number 2 as far as their undergraduate online program. Their program consists of 40+ online bachelor programs that you can receive, and because of this, they're considered one of the more leaders in online education use. So into the Global Freshman Academy. Arizona State and EDX have partnered for a fall 2016 experiment in which they'll they'll have 12 online MOOC classes in which students can take or choose to take 8 of these MOOC courses, and they'll offer them for academic credit. After completing these and obviously passing them, you can receive a full freshman year workload fully online. So the president of Arizona State, Michael Crow, he made a good argument saying that this is kind of revolutionary because entering students coming from high school have the opportunity to take these courses prior to the start of the semester, so there's no start deadline for this. So hypothetically, if a high school student wants to take these 8 courses and can complete them before the beginning of the semester, he can basically finish his full freshman year before even setting foot on campus. So it's basically cutting down college time, and if done appropriately, you can be looking at a 3-year college career. So the monetary breakdown of it. Arizona State is predicting that the cost will be about $200 per credit, which is about half of what they normally charge for their online programs, which is around $400 to $500. So the total cost of the Global Freshman Academy is around $6,000. So obviously you compare that to their normal tuition for 1 year is $19,000 for in-state and $34,000 for out-of-state. And you can see that there's this dramatic decrease in what you would pay for 1 year. So obviously, this use of Global Freshman Academy is kind of breaking the industry, is what they're calling it, and trying to break down the traditional college setting. And I kind of broke it down to 4 main points. The first is the use of MOOCs as credit. Online College Report Card, which is a research group that researches on the use of online education in the higher education, lists that around 11.3% of universities are using this. So the fact that Arizona State is using it as a complete online freshman academy is quite revolutionary. The second is the reduction in overall price. Obviously, paying $6,000 for a full year of tuition is a lot better than paying, say, $19,000, which you would normally at Arizona State. The third and fourth reason kind of go hand in hand. The availability of courses to its students, which allow them to take it without the use of a start deadline, so they can take it within the summer, and if done appropriately, they have the opportunity to attain a 3-year college career. So with that being said, I want to pass it on to you to talk about online versus on-campus learning.
Thanks, Mike. All right, so I'll be covering and comparing firsthand experiences between online and on-campus nursing, statistics, and special education courses. Developments in computing and technology have allowed for growth within education, introducing methods that were previously unattainable. However, traditionally, many have preferred on-campus over online classes, but have failed to consider certain outcomes relating to that decision. Students have problems, concerns, and assumptions about steering away from the long-established in-class education. These problems and concerns are especially prevalent in the nursing field, where skills have historically been taught through face-to-face contact, hands-on experience and observation of tasks, and also repetition of exercises, Students enrolled in the online classes tend to worry about their inability to participate, incapability to access information, engagement in class discussions, and material being unclear. So the nursing study that my team and I observed collected data from 61 nursing students. Out of those 61 nursing students, 53 completed the course, 30 were that of online students, 23 were face-to-face students. These students had the same material, exams, and instructor. The study compared experiences and insights of the online and on-campus students based on results from the Student Instructional Report, Volume 2. It measured appropriateness of taught material, clarity of taught material, level of support and immediacy of tutor response, engagement in class discussions, and their overall learning experiences. The results of the online students who had a higher but similar GPA at the beginning of the course spent almost 25% more time on course material per week than their in-class counterparts. This is important to note, as online students initially felt less confident at the beginning of the course. This is likely because online students felt motivated to work harder, as they might be missing information easily attained in the on-campus class. After speaking with Mary Sullivan, the Dean of Nursing at the University of Rhode Island, she informed me that URI has recently launched its first fully online nursing program, which took place in September. It is an RN BS program. The faculty has used a hybrid approach in the past with undergraduate and graduate students, which has apparently worked very well, especially for busy graduate students who are often working RNs. The online working nursing program is 100% online, costs $318 per credit, allows for students to complete the program in as little as 15 months, is CCNE accredited, is taught by the same faculty as the on-campus class, and offers personal coaching support to assist students throughout the program. The intensive research conducted, as well as the accounts of students within the study, shows that there is essentially no significant difference between taking a nursing class online and on campus. Similar issues in that of nursing arose when we looked at the differences between an online and on-campus statistics class. Many instructors, especially those who are teaching it for their first time and have no past experience, are often bewildered when trying to duplicate their in-class curriculum into an online curriculum. Some educators also believe that these online classes are taking away from the student and teacher interaction, which they believe is the most important part of the educational process. Without an enthusiastic instructor, student motivation and morale is often perceived as low or even non-existent. The statistics course we followed consisted of 38 undergraduate students, 17 of which were online and 21 of which took the class face-to-face. The course was delivered amongst students using Blackboard, which is a branch of WebCT technology, and students were expected to have daily access to internet and email. It was organized on a weekly basis, meaning students had a week to complete the necessary readings and assignments. Knowledge of statistics among students was measured based on their performance during 3 exams and a final exam, all exactly the same between modes. The second instrument, a measure of student satisfaction within the course, was derived from evaluation forms developed at the University of Washington's Office of Educational Assessment, which resulted in indications that showed fairly good reliability for each measure. The research analysis focused on 2 main questions. 1, were there any differences in statistics knowledge as measured by students on the examinations? And 2, were there any differences in student attitudes as measured by course evaluations? No notable differences were found regarding student knowledge of the subject upon completion of the course. To assess differences in satisfaction between the 2 presentation methods, 16 questions related to the instructor and the course were evaluated. Of these 16 items, 7 show significant differences, 4 of which were instructor-related and 3 of which were course-related. Most of the significant group differences were detected within the instructor-related items, including instructor's explanation, enthusiasm, openness to students, and interest in student success. As for the course-related items, discussion, quality, and grading techniques posed dilemmas for students who attempted the course. Regardless of reported evaluations and low satisfaction rates of the web course delivery, results show that the statistics instruction via online is a viable opportunity for students to gain knowledge of the subject, and students learn just as much as that of online students. We can note from these findings that the students who participated in this study learned just as much as their counterparts. The third and final course subject evaluated, observed, and researched was that of a recent special education course undertaken at a large Midwestern public university. Of the 119 students and 97 face-to-face students, 55% of the online students were education majors, and 52% of the face-to-face students were education majors. More than 80% of these students were females, who seemed to be the dominant gender in these courses of study. The course was organized into 5 separate learning modules, each of which were delivered over a 3-week span and situated with 3 chapters. Students in both groups were required to participate in online group discussions using Blackboard. Because of the large presence of students in the online lecture, 14 groups of 8 or 9 students were organized compared to 12 discussion groups of 8 or 9 in the face-to-face class. Findings of student achievement are shown through 7 measures, including the test grades and end product GPAs. These seem to have a direct correlation with the attendance of the classes, with the face-to-face ranging from 77 to 88%, and the online attendance ranging from 68 to 79%. Student engagement was also measured by questions and office visits and online discussion participation. The findings from these studies exhibit widespread results for all 3 courses. Student satisfaction upon completion of the course was actually higher than that of face-to-face, particularly because of the increased level of motivation, maturity, and responsibility required by the student in order to complete the course and perform above and beyond. While these outcomes will certainly differ among students and even teachers, they suggest that online courses are certainly viable means of education for those looking to steer away from the traditional face-to-face experience and lower the cost of education. Perhaps with further research and technology, we can one day be able to provide future distance education courses for all fields of study that exceed limitations placed by face-to-face classes.
Heard was the beginning of the industrial.
Hi everyone, I'm Matt.
I'm Ryan.
And as we know, college is essential if one is to succeed not only financially and in their career. However, as we also know, in this day and age, many people simply can't afford to go to college because of rising tuition. And this is a serious problem. As some of our groups previously mentioned, this is a bubble that's only getting bigger and bigger until it pops, and it'll have dire consequences for all of society. So we know this is a problem, and with any problem, there needs to come a viable solution. So with this solution, we need to find real change and successful change at the same time. Bernie Sanders, who is the Democratic nominee running for president, recognizes this problem, and he's talked about it extensively. And he also has a very extensive solution to this problem. In his solution, he actually looks across the pond and he goes over to the region of Scandinavia, a region where he sees benefits such as college tuition being free, the cost of living being very high, the people enjoying many societal benefits, and the much higher unemployment rate. He sees these benefits and he wants to apply them to his plan. But could his solutions work? Are they even realistic? Are they viable? These are the questions that really interest us. These are the questions that we believe we have to ask in order to solve this problem. And so that is why our research question is as follows. Could Bernie Sanders' higher education proposal be realistic in the United States? So to give you more information about Bernie's plan, here's Ryan.
So now let's talk about Bernie Sanders, the current senator of Vermont. Bernie was born September 8th, 1941 in Brooklyn, New York. He attended Brooklyn College and University of Chicago. He was first the mayor of Burlington, Vermont in 1981, where he started his political career. And he's been the senator of Vermont since 2006. He was re-elected in 2012, receiving 71% of all votes in Vermont, a pretty staggering number. So he launched his campaign for presidency in Burlington, Vermont on May 26, 2016. And he's most known for his 5.1373 College for All Act that Matt and I are looking into and comparing to Scandinavia. So, for a little intro, Sanders states, I will make a fight to make sure every American who studies hard can go to college regardless of how much income their parents make without going into debt. He also states that this isn't a radical idea and that it will revolutionize our current higher education by raising GDP and creating higher incomes due to having more college degrees. So what I'm going to go over for Bernie Sanders and his higher education act is his 6-step plan he'll use to implement 5.173 College for All Act, why this will benefit our country, his goals, the tax implications it'll have on our country, and I will show data exhibits on tax rates, unemployment, then briefly compare Sanders to Ronald Reagan, who also had similar tax structures. So for Bernie's 6-step plan, so to implement 5.1273 College for All Act, Sanders' plan that some would say is infeasible to make higher education free at all colleges and universities because it hasn't been done. The last time it was done was in California when public universities were free. This was a bill that was proposed in the 1960s, but it was a short-lived era. We then went back to tuition being $243 in 1965, and now we're seeing public college and university tuitions being $9,000 on average. So Sanders' next step in his 6-step plan would be to stop the federal government from making profits on student loans. He sees this as a huge issue and he really needs to bring attention to it. Over the next decade, Sanders states that the federal government will make $110 billion off student loans. I, along with Matt, think this is a ludicrous number that could be allocated much differently than it currently is. This could be kept in college students' pockets that would lower the high student loan rates that we're incurring right now, making it so hard for college students to really pay for higher education. The next step would be, as briefly stated in the last paragraph, Sanders wants to cut student loan rates. The average student loan rate right now is 4.29%. Sanders would cut these to 2.37%, and that would take a significant burden off college graduates who are already incurring a lot of expenses while enduring the stress of trying to find an adequate job to pay for their college degree. The next step not only would he cut interest rates, but we would be able to refinance our interest rates. Sanders states that he finds it absurd that you can get an auto loan rate for 2.5%, but college grads are paying astronomical rates up to 8.5% in some situations on their college tuition loans. These loans would be refinanced at the lowest possible rate, and this would be effective immediately once Sanders passes this bill. So the final step, college students struggling financially, taking a full course load or even just 4 classes, making them a full-time student is a full-time job in itself, as we know. There isn't much time to work, making it hard to pay for books, rent, and other expenses that go along with being a college student. The Sanders plan would require public colleges and universities to meet 100% of financial needs for lowest income students. Low-income students would be able to use federal, state, and college financial aid to cover room, board, books, and living expenses. And Sanders would more than triple the federal work-study program to build valuable career experience that would help them after they graduated. This would allow for more college students to make it feasible to attend college, not worry about the absurd expenses that go along with college, and we would be able to fill more jobs with Americans having necessary qualifications to fill the unemployed jobs. Sanders states that there would be $1 billion annually spent to cover these expenses, a far cry from the $700,000 that is being spent right now. He also states that you wouldn't have to reapply for financial aid through FAFSA each year, which you have to do now, which we all know can be very time-consuming, and it's a stressful task that Sanders thinks could be easily done away with. Finally, his last step would be how much this would cost on us. Of course, it's going to cost a lot. Currently, higher education costs the United States $35 billion a year, a very high number. This number will increase to $75 billion. Sanders, a very liberal candidate, proposes that this would be paid for Wall Street speculators, who he claims nearly destroyed the economy 7 years ago. The tax that would be imposed on Wall Street speculators would be a 90% tax on Wall Street. This is similar to taxes that have been imposed, and that is why Sanders views this as a feasible proposal. He states that over 1,000 economists have endorsed a tax on Wall Street speculation today, and 40 countries throughout the world have imposed a similar tax, including Britain, Germany, France, Switzerland, and China. So one of the major issues Sanders has with our current higher education system is the fact that so many individuals are not going to college because they can't afford it. Therefore, this is leading to a higher unemployment rate and a lower GDP. Two main reasons that Sanders is looking to address the 5.1373 College for All Act. On the Federal Reserve Economic Data website, as known as FRED, that I'm sure many have seen, I found very helpful data on the unemployment rate of those 25 and older who have a college degree and those 25 and older who do not have a college degree. As you can see, the differences, most notably in 2010, those who have a bachelor's degree, the unemployment rate is 4.7 versus the high school diploma, which is 10.3. So these numbers are pretty significant, and it really does make a difference to have a bachelor's degree, which is what Sanders is hoping to accomplish. So now that I've shown the unemployment rates, I'm going to show how Sanders would increase taxes. So these are Bernie Sanders' current tax rates. The tax rates are similar to the current tax rates we have now up until the 151,201 through 230,450 bracket that is being taxed at 28%. After this bracket, we see an increase at the 230,450 to 411,500 being taxed at 33%. Sanders would switch this to 230,041 through 250,000 being taxed at 33%. So we can see here,
Ryan, you're gonna have to wrap this up. You're over.
okay, going back and forth that Sanders would obviously be increasing his taxes. Let me just do this. So as I briefly stated, Sanders blames the Wall Street for the '08 stock market crash. In this, he believes they should partially be punished, which is why he wants to put a Robin Hood tax that would impose on Wall Street speculators. In this tax, Sanders would impose a 0.5% speculation fee on investment houses, hedge funds, and other stock trades, as well as a 0.1% fee on bonds and a 0.005% fee charged on derivatives. Sanders states that these very small taxes on the financial sector would be enough to cover the $75 billion it would take to annually to provide for free education.
Okay, so Ryan just talked about Bernie's policies, but we also have to look at the inspiration behind these policies. And like I said, Bernie draws a lot of inspiration from Scandinavia. So Scandinavia is the region consisting of Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden. And there are three aspects in this region that really kind of set it apart from the US, and it's something that Bernie really wants to draw upon if he does become president. So the first is the affordability of higher education. The unique thing about this is that all tuition at universities in this region are free. However, there are other areas such as food and board, school supplies that aren't free and are in fact very expensive. So expensive, in fact, that students have to take out loans and grants, much like us, from these state-sponsored units just to afford them, just to pay for these necessities in order to succeed as students. So that's one aspect of it. The next is the high cost of living. The high cost of living is very evident in this region. The personal income tax rate is 51%. That region is 51%, and compare that to the US, which has around 40%. So a big difference in between the two. And this is the tax that governments really impose on citizens and corporations to really use that revenue and those earnings to fund their activities and to serve the public. So if you're taxing the citizens more, the government can produce more, and I'll talk about the benefits that come with that in a little bit. And next, you have the price level of goods and services. It's very expensive to buy these things in Scandinavia. Norway is actually second in Europe in terms of the price level of goods and services, and Denmark comes in with a close third. So students, degree or no degree, they already know that they're going to have to be living frugal, that they're going to have to be living in this climate where it's tough. They're going to be getting taxed a lot. They're going to have to be buying things that are extremely expensive. So that's just one aspect of the Scandinavian lifestyle. Next, you have the social benefits, like I said before. So if you're in this region, there are a lot of social benefits that you get for paying all these high taxes. Some of the more notable ones include universal health care, which is viewed more as a right rather than an option. You also have the extended maternity leave, the extended vacation rate. So a lot of services that really kind of cater to the citizen and make them feel kind of comforted by the government, who is really imposing a lot of taxes on them and making them live in a very frugal society. And next, you have the unemployment benefits. So if you're unemployed, you are provided training, you're provided food, shelter, and other necessities that you need to survive. So if you're unemployed, you are well taken care of, and the unemployment rate is actually 6.7% in this entire region. The U.S. unemployment rate is 5%, so it's kind of a small difference, but at the same time, it's a notable difference. And when more people are living off the system, the motivation for going to school kind of decreases if you know that you can sort of benefit off the system without having to get a degree or kind of challenge yourself for school. And next, you have, so Now I'm going to hand it over to Ryan, who will conclude our presentation by answering our research question.
So I'll ask the question again. Could Bernie Sanders' higher education proposal be realistic in the United States? After Matt looked at Scandinavia and I looked at Bernie Sanders' proposal, we made the assessment that it would not be realistic in the United States. First, the economic consequences I stated are just unreal. The taxation. Secondly, the fact that trying to apply what works in Scandinavia doesn't apply to the United States. Their higher tax rate and their cost of living is what fuels the fact that tuition is free. Many people in the United States wouldn't be able to afford other things like room, board, and food. Scandinavia has a 51% tax rate compared to our 40% tax rate. We wouldn't be able to allocate that share of tax revenue into making all universities free. Raising taxes would mean business having layoffs, workers, and thus the unemployment rate would rise versus what Sanders thinks, is what Matt and I ultimately decided. And yeah, that's it.
And also, I like to say, I really hope you guys learned something about Bernie in this region, because it is a very important election. So we really wanted to kind of inform you about what Bernie is proposing. So we hope that you kind of got this nugget of knowledge that you can sort of use to apply to your life. And if you do vote, if you can, apply that to your decision. So yeah, we hope you guys learned something.
Hi, I'm Mike. This is Mark. Kim is also in our group. She couldn't be here today. So our topic is the skills gap. First and foremost, one term that kind of summed up my take on the skills gap was skills, thrills, and dollar bills. This, however obscene of a reference it might seem to be, I kind of came to this vision when I had a Nike t-shirt that says skills, thrills, and dollar bills. And upon further dissection of this and complete over manipulation of what that means was it had to do with what skills really do mean. So in the context of this t-shirt, a Nike product, skills refer to athletic ability, hand-eye coordination, and that's not the skills gap, is it? It would be nice if it was, but it's simply not. So we have to differentiate what types of skills there are, what types employers are seeking, the current workforce, and go on from there in terms of what the future implications of the skills gap have on the future of higher education. So there are methods to attain skills via internships and experience, just hands-on, that a lot of employers look for. Others could be higher education, as where we are right now. So from the perspective of employer versus employee versus an educator, there are different types of perceptions of a skills gap. Some promote the idea that it really exists and it's a huge cataclysmic issue in the job market today, whereas others, like Paul Krugman, says that it's always this recurring fallacy almost, where it's not really in any true existence. But so that's where we came in to kind of dissect what's wrong and what's right. So first and foremost, in terms of what skills employers are seeking, a lot of big ones that kind of came across the board over time as well was problem solving, reasoning, critical thinking, verbal and written communication skills, as well as technological ability. So why a skills gap would connotate that those skills are lacking in the emerging employees coming from like the millennial generation, essentially, as in us. So why is that? Where is the lack of skills? Why is this important? And why is this lack of skills important? So as all of the baby boomers retire, most of them will retire by like 2020 or so. A huge number of jobs will open, and of those predictions or prediction variables, expectations say, according to the lack of employable workers as it currently states, 5 million jobs will go unfilled after all the baby boomers kind of file out of the employing workforce. And so just to kind of put it in perspective as well, in 2015, 35% of 38,000 employers reported a difficulty filling these open jobs due to a lack of talent. that was indicative enough to kind of connotate some type of level of a skills gap existing to some degree. So let's see. The role of higher education. So where do colleges and where does URI kind of take a stand in terms of what the skills gap is? So a big portion of this was dissecting how college has changed over time. So the nuances of today's college experience versus those of 35 years ago. Obviously, tuition and costs is a huge portion of what impacts today's college experience. You don't really so much, one thing that we've kind of discussed is not so much the hippie days of like the 1970s and 1960s, but of where you'd study to learn, you'd apply that knowledge across multiple disciplines and your life and your outlook. It was you studied and you learned, and it was more conceptualizing things rather than applying and learning specific skill sets and certain things to apply to a job, a means to an end, kind of. That didn't really exist. It was more you'd learn something and then you take your life from there and from your degree. So nowadays, instead of that that kind of more freelance learning approach, it's kind of more of what I kind of labeled as a study to pass phenomenon, where students kind of seek easier courses, easy gen eds to kind of boost your GPAs over the course of your career, instead of taking courses to kind of broaden your academic horizons and kind of widen your repertoire of academic prestige, so to speak. So over time, college has clearly changed a lot with those ways. One aspect of college that has fluctuated over time has been tuition. Tuition has grown steadily from 1989 to 2014. There's been a steady rise in percentage as articulated by that graph there. And that graph describes the rise in percentage of tuition's makeup of total revenues of public institutions. So how might this translate to skills, you might ask? Well, I would say that it shows empirical evidence to support the importance of tuition/enrollment to the sufficiency and maintenance of public institutions, like one is URI, to continue being in service. Students consume education from these institutions that provide what they'd like to consider strong job prospects or returns, and in term is a return on their investment, which as tuition increases, your investment is larger, thus you'd expect more income back. So the growth of technology in artificial intelligence fields, as well as big data across multitudes of disciplines, seek to alleviate that current skills gap and make up for the lack of skills and ability. Programs, and this is kind of a prediction as well, programs with trending aspects of technology like computer science or computer engineering and whatnot will thrive in enrollment numbers and emerge as institutional breadwinners of colleges, kind of like pharmacy is, where you have a lot of kids that come here, they get the nicer dorms, they kind of get the better technology and whatnot because they make so much money for the university. Beyond that, I kind of focused a lot on the academic research in qualitative nature. Among those academic papers, I took a lot from the Association of American Colleges and Universities. They conducted surveys with employers and found, for example, that of employers, 91% agreed for long-term success. A candidate's demonstrated capacity to think critically, communicate clearly, and solve complex problems is more important than his undergraduate major or field of study. Thank you. My bad. So from a promotion of experiential learning like internships and campus involvement, they kind of found that was more important than, say, GPA or straight knowledge from courses. Over time, I found that communication skills over studies over a period of time in terms of assessing what skills employers found important or not important. Communication-related skills were kind of prevalent throughout history. Critical thinking was also prevalent, but that kind of emerged later on around like the early 2000s, late 1990s as being like a trait that employers saw. So beyond those employers' expectations, I also searched high and low for some information on what employees desired from employers. And so I found a small study of millennials with 1 year of job experience in the DC, Maryland area. And from that study, there was a lot of strong feelings towards employers providing growth potential opportunities, professionally and skill-wise. All in all, I found a lot of concrete evidence of some type of skills gap or talent but we work to connect the current job market and employers take to a historical context with Mark, as well as examine the premier emerging skills, source of skills in the U.S. via artificial intelligence and technological development. I am sorry, Mark.
No problem. Well, thank you, Mike. So this part of this presentation, we want to look at the historical value of the skills gap and see if we were able see if in different time periods people saw this. So we want to analyze the skills gap. I will be looking at various types of data sets such as the growth of college employment and the labor force. I will explain the increase of these two variables over time. I will explain how higher education has changed over the years, including information given from experts such as the faculty at the University of Rhode Island and Bryan University. I will discuss and analyze what higher education skills were expected in that time frame, and discuss what students were learning then and compare it to now. I will then go into how higher education has changed throughout the years because of the increase in technology, like Mike said. And lastly, I would like to conclude my data analysis on how and why incoming college students, currently enrolled students, should be concerned about jobs after graduation. As provided by my research partner, Mike, the definition of the skills gap is the perceived disconnect between the needs of employers for skilled talent and the lack, therefore, of possessed by the available workforce. When analyzing historic data, I did not find anything specifically related to the skills gap from decades ago. So I needed to analyze the historical data. I needed to find specific research methods and try to relate it back to the skills gap. First, I wanted to look at the growth of college employment and compare it to the population and the labor force. The time frame I wanted to analyze was around the increase of jobs available on the market. It was between the 1960s to 2014, basically when the baby boomers came to action, and to now. As we look at figure 1.0 right here, the following information is provided from the Population Reference Bureau. It's noticed that from the 1950s to 2000, there was a steady correlation between the population and labor. Although look at the year 2010 and what happened in that decade, we can see the population growing greater than it ever had before, causes the correlation between population and labor further apart. Now, when we look at the skills gap and what employers say that they have trouble finding employees that meet their needs. But with the increase in population over time, how is that so? According to a study done by the Center of Education in the Workforce at Georgetown University, there will be 165 million job openings by the year 2020, with 65% of those openings requiring some sort of post-secondary education. This creates a new sense of competition among graduates, which also making it impossible for those without continuing educated degrees to be eligible. The reason behind the upcoming job openings are a result of the creation of new jobs, mainly technical jobs, and maybe because of baby boomers. Like Mike said, 5 million of these jobs will go unfilled because the skill sets of graduates will fail to meet the needs of employers. And then, like Mike said, also like last year, an employee survey conveyed that 35% of 38,000 employees report difficulty filling jobs due to the lack of available talent. This will most likely increase with the increase of job openings in 2020. Now, this issue raises questions on the value of a college degree. But as we look at the information given us from the National Center for Education Statistics in Figure 1.1, which shows us the growth of college enrollment, when we can determine that the young generation believes that the college degree is valuable. When we look at this data sheet, one thing sticks out, and that is the ratio between the number of high school completers and the amount enrolled in college. The greatest ratio came in 2014. Of the 2,950 of students that completed high school, 2,050 enrolled in college. No, that's in the thousands, so that's in millions. We can make the assumption now that the value of a degree is ultimately greater than it ever had before. As we compare both Figure 1 and Figure 1.1, we can figure out that there's a different why employees feel that way. With the increase in college degrees and the increase in difficulty for employees to find applicants with the skills that need to work efficiently, we can assume now that it doesn't involve the major that college graduates possess, but we can assume now that it's because college students don't possess the skills other than a college degree. Higher educational institutes are in today's world not in tune with employees' needs. Before we go into why this is, we must understand how these higher educations are changing and if they have been happening for decades. Having the opportunity to talk to a group of accounting workers at the University of Rhode Island led me to another issue of how general education courses are looked at differently today. Before I reached this area, I thought the skills gap was dead, but with faculty from the University of Rhode Island and Bryant, it really enlightened me to this new idea. So I met with a couple of accountants. My mother, actually, she works in the accounting department, and her coworkers, Jenny Carroll and Rebecca Robinson, who work there also. They work in trade accounting majors to prepare for the work after college, and some of them, they have been there for over 30 years, and they attended URI, and they can see that there's a perceived difference in ways that today's seniors perceive the general education curriculum and how they perceived it back then. So overall, there's been a transformation among the general education curriculum. College and universities always had a sense of structured core programs or general education courses. In the 1960s, due to the increase in college enrollment and because of student opinion, these course programs and general education courses were loosened to give students the freedom of choice. In the 1970s, colleges and universities implemented a focus on vocational and provisional preparation for the real world. And then from the 1990s till now, there's been a significant amount of change in institutions. In 1991, a survey based on the trends of general education and core curriculum found that over 200 colleges and universities increased their incentives and expansions of general education programs. Employers look to hire college graduates with skills such as writing, communication, cultural awareness, Excel, PowerPoint, entrepreneurial skills in the major that is obviously qualified. With this being said, I also talked to another important figure at the Bryant University. He's the director of business management over there, and he also expresses that there is a disconnect between employers and the educational curriculum there. So general education courses have been subject in the 19th century as broad grounding courses to a college student that needs to work and live in the world. They both say that in this generation, students perceive the general curriculum courses, like Mike said, just to breeze right through them and not take into account what they actually should do. In the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s, even authors said during class that they all perceived it as a core culture of trying to live in the world that we are today. They would give you those core values. When we look at the skills gap, now we can kind of go through the technological advancements. So why is the colleges and universities expanding on their curriculum every once in a while? Well, they start with the age of discovery for technology advancement. They adapt to technology and employers' needs. In 1970, they changed their curriculum to be based on what students wanted to do because all the baby boomers come to era, so they needed to adapt to their needs. The 1980s, they recognized the existence and they started doing the vocational and provisional outlook on the courses. So basically, I'm running out of time right here, but then and now, in the 1990s, companies started to introduce training programs for these workers, but in the 21st century, it was hard for companies to supply these training programs every year because they would have to adjust them in order to keep with the technology advancements. So basically, colleges and universities adapt their curriculum towards employers' needs and the technological advancements. Regarding the previous information we talked about before, in the 1990s, we can now assume that over 200 colleges and universities adjust their general education curriculum based on what employers want. Higher education institutions are made to prepare students for the workforce. By doing this, institutions supply and change the curriculum according to employers' needs. But in the 21st century, technology is growing incredibly fast. Higher educational institutes are struggling to keep up with this, and because of the increase in technology and with employers' needs.
And next, we're going to touch on some of Kim's portion
Just to
to
sum
tie
up.
it in and bring. No,
You said
do
you
it
gave
out of
us-
time.
You said you would give us 3 extra
okay.
minutes each to do this, but we can just do it. We don't have to do it.
I mean, it's up to you if you feel it's critical. Because we are
Well, just if we can
pressed
just
for time.
briefly, okay,
Yeah,
like
just briefly
2
sum it
minutes,
up.
yeah. So Kim's portion had a lot to do with technology and artificial intelligence and the emergence of that as a new market and just a lot of jobs that are coming of that nowadays. So we'll just move on.
So basically, what she was saying, because we were talking about the general education curriculum and how it's changing due to technological advances and employers' needs. Kim was going to touch on why this is because the increase in technology has become so essential to other jobs and occupations and advancements.
A couple of avenues of that were driverless cars, virtual assistants, robots, automated mail sorting systems, as just some of the examples of it. And so just to tie it all in, so these future implications based on the technology and the historical perspective on what the skills gap is, was and or will be. So could these advances in artificial intelligence as well as technology lead to even fewer middle-class jobs going forward? And how will higher education adapt? We predicted that some of the potential areas of change were more technology-infused curriculums where there would be more technology-based general education courses that incorporate big data and or like clip data, which is complex, large, interactive, professionally formed data applications, similar to what teachers are doing nowadays. Elementary education majors are looked to incorporate more data aspects towards their actual job more than ever before, as an example, as well as previously touched upon, an expansion of the engineering computer science programs as those breadwinning programs to kind of be the harboring of a lot of higher enrollment like pharmacy, like nursing, etc. And yeah, so that's what we predict. Yeah. Cool.
Now, Mike, you're not trying to push those baby boomers out.
Hi, we're here to talk to you today about the way that depression is treated at the University of Rhode Island regarding our project called Depressing Potential at the University of Rhode Island.
So my name is Erin Ferguson, and before we start, we're just going to give a little personal anecdote from each of us about why we chose this topic, because I know for some people it's been kind of an odd topic for us to just choose in terms of higher education. So we chose this topic because we both have personal beliefs in it. I actually ended up dropping out of college for a year due to depression issues, and that's actually made me now, it's going to take 6 years for me to graduate, so that's my personal little piece of it.
And I'm Claudia. I had a really hard time transitioning to the school that I used to go to. I'm actually a transfer student. I would sleep for around 18 to 20 hours a day, and no one reached out to me because nobody knew that I was depressed, including myself. So we have, personal stake in this project, but we're going to also explain to you why the University of Rhode Island should care as much about this topic as we do.
So in terms of depression, obviously, what is it? There's a large range of symptoms that they can just include, which in terms of sleep, includes changing sleep habits, persistent sadness, obviously in severe cases, thoughts of suicide and even death, which is obviously a huge issue. And it's becoming more prevalent and more severe on college campuses. Actually, in 2010, the American College Health Association reported that 45.6% of students feel helpless and actually have struggles in their day-to-day lives. And nearly 30.7% of students felt helpless. Now, in 2013, these numbers had actually grown. The National College Health Assessment was able to show this, with 50% of students feeling helpless and 33% of students feeling depressed every day. And there's obviously a lot of obstacles to overcome in terms of treatment, and one of the huge parts of that, which our project will address, is the negative stigma that goes along with depression.
So like Erin said, there are a lot of obstacles that are involved with treating depression, and a large national survey that reached millions of people in 2014, the results are shown here for one of the questions on it, and it basically shows what are the biggest reasons that people who are depressed did not receive treatment. Cost is, perhaps unsurprisingly to us as economics majors, the biggest concern that people have, but people are also concerned in regards to treating depression about convenience, maybe thinking that treatment will not be helpful to their condition or that they don't need it, and also concerns about accessibility, like where they might be able to get treatment, what times and things like that.
So obviously I hit on already, it is a growing problem that's faced in universities. Obviously, as more students are attending college, the need for resources grows as well, just as you need more classes and stuff like that. So in 2006, the annual report of college mental health directors, 92% of them said that mental health conditions, including very severe ones, are actually severely on the rise in colleges specifically. And the majority of those include depression and suicidal thoughts. In fact, there was a scholarly article written called Mental Health and the Academic Success in College that explains that mental health disorders are actually more frequently onset between the ages of 18 and 24. So that's normally when you're coming into college, which is a huge reason why this needs to be addressed within higher education. With those onset issues first coming on and you're adjusting to college, it's really hard to know how to deal with that. And a lot of times you need other people around you to help you through those issues. So in terms of what depression does to students, in terms of your overall mental health, which is obviously affected, your overall health in general will be affected as well. Fluctuations in weight is a huge aspect that goes along with one of the symptoms of depression, as well as your eating habits tend to go downhill, and you tend to pull yourself away and socialize less with those around you. In terms of that, your knowledge retention is also weakened, which also is a result of your loss of your interest in your courses, which can negatively affect you. In fact, in 2005, a Western Michigan University study found that if you are diagnosed with depression, you also have an association with a 0.49% drop in your GPA, which obviously we know as students going forward, that can be a huge difference between going on probation, which can further your depression, and also long-term effects just with the overall likelihood of you receiving your degree. It also increases the likelihood that you might drop out and creates other negative externalities for the school as well.
So I've just explained to you how when a student is depressed, their entire quality of life can be diminished as a result. But when depression is a serious problem in a student body, it also negatively affects the institutions that they attend. Again, Aaron just said students who have depression are associated with a 0.49 point lower GPA. Presumably you're going to get less successful graduates and less successful alumni. You're also going to have lower retention. It was shown in a recent study that 64% of students in recent years who were depressed and dropped out did so because of their mental health issues. So being depressed is a significant risk factor for dropping out, which makes sense considering how it makes students less happy and less successful in college. It also creates harm to an institution. If a school is known for having a problem with depression and not actively addressing it, that's going to make students not want to go there. And so is the effect that depression in students will have on college rankings. Retention rates are a direct factor in college rankings, which many students who are considering entering college use to compare schools and maybe get an idea of where they'd like to go. So URI is presumably going to have less successful students going to or applying and eventually deciding on coming to URI if it has problems with retention because of depression. Finally, URI would suffer. Finally, URI is going to suffer significant financial losses directly from students dropping out if they have depression. Recently, tuition plus room and board at the University of Rhode Island for in-state students, which is a low estimate, comes to about $25,000 a year. URI has a freshman retention rate of about 81.5%, translating to a freshman dropout rate of about 18.5%. And at URI, with the current enrollment, this translates to 539 undergraduate students who are depressed, lost each year. In total, that comes to about a loss of about $13.5 million, assuming that they all live on campus, as is common for freshman students. Again, we can't say with confidence that they leave because of depression, but we can say that it plays a significant role in their decision to leave. And also, performance-based budgeting needs to be considered because the university is going to, in 2018, a bill was recently passed that's going to allocate state funds largely on the basis of how many bachelor degrees are given out by a university, and if more students drop out and fail to complete these degrees, then the university is going to lose out on potential funds for that reason as well.
So obviously, as Claudia was just saying, the huge number of dropouts obviously has a huge financial impact on the university itself. Obviously, you can imagine what URI would be able to do with $13.5 million. And it seems a little scary to hear that number at first, but that is just assuming that these 539 students are simply dropping out and they're in state. You can imagine what it would be if they're out of state, and when you accumulate that over 4 years, if they were to drop out as freshmen, we're talking about a lot of money for the university. So in terms of attacking the problem, this is why URI needs to be on the forefront of it. It's a relatively cheap aspect to address, and one major aspect of it is evaluating how you deal with depression, looking at how other schools treat depression, especially schools that are comparable to URI, which we'll do a little bit further down the road. And mainly improving awareness and education. Obviously, if there's a negative stigma or you're afraid that if you're seen walking into the counseling center that someone's going to think that there's something wrong with you or that people are going to be talking about you, you're going to be less likely to get help. And the longer that you wait, the more these type of issues snowball. And obviously, identifying necessary areas of change, which for URI we've done as well, which we'll examine a little bit further.
So we talked to you a little bit about the URI Counseling Center last time we were here. Again, it's located in Roosevelt Hall, has 7 full-time staff members, 2 of which are administrators who are busy enough to not return our emails. It's recommended by the International Association of Counseling Services that counseling centers on campuses maintain a 1 to 1,000 full-time counselor to student ratio. URI's is currently at almost double that at 1 to 1,949 students, suggesting that the counseling center might want to consider employing more full-time members. However, that's of course an issue for schools who are always concerned about money. The modal number of sessions is 3, which might reflect that the counseling center is effective, but at the same time, the counseling center does encourage students to go off campus, and students who are discouraged with counseling, as is common, might choose to not come back. And there's a lack of information at the counseling center. They offer peer support, but not for people suffering from depression. And they can't make students come in if they need help or send them home if they believe students are too troubled to be in school. Again, Counselor Homan, who I spoke to, said that she didn't think the counseling center could handle the full load of depressed students at URI if they all came to seek treatment. Early Alert exists, but it simply points people to the under-resourced counseling center. a quiz that, or a survey in MapWorks that students take in URI 101 identifies students who are at risk of developing problems like depression, but this only helps freshmen, and it only helps freshmen who feel comfortable talking to their professors, who they then have to have a one-on-one meeting with about depression. So that's going to be not very many students.
So in terms of what other schools are doing, last time we spoke a little bit about Aurora University, which is actually a university that uses their psychology department as well as their main health department to work together to teach new literature concepts and new ways to just help beat the struggle of depression that its students may be facing, as well as basically increase awareness and conversation amongst the faculty and staff. But for this final project, we really wanted to look at 3 really comparable schools to URI, which is the University of Connecticut, University of New Hampshire, and University of Massachusetts, as other groups have said earlier today. Now, looking at them broken down one by one, we'll start with the University of Connecticut. Their online counseling page blows URI's out of the water, which is one thing that we really noticed. If you were to go to the URI Counseling Center page, you'll find 2 pieces of information. One is a link onto an online self-assessment, and the other one is call this number to make an appointment. And that's really all there is. Now, if you look at the University of Connecticut, they actually have compiled a large number of resources, including a list of movies that their students might find interesting to watch and help relate to, a list of books that they can read, as well as information on a yoga class that they do that actually teaches you how to deal with meditation, stresses within school, and that's actually held twice a week throughout the entire year, and it's done in the library and in the mental health center so that students can feel like they're coming in and there's not a negative stigma around it. You're coming to do something exciting, you're coming to do yoga, work out, and it really pushes your mind into a new direction. As well as doing all of that, UNH actually steps the bar up even another level, and they have what's called Allies for Change. And this is a campus-run group, so it's run by faculty, staff, and students, and it's made up of all by them. And they actually partnered with, it's called Bring Change to Mind, which is actually a national slogan, and their whole idea is to erase the stigma of mental health concerns. And in fact, a lot of NFL players have actually been involved with this as well, so it's a really national, broadened aspect. They also invented something called Cognito. So it's an online source that you can use right there. You go on their counseling center website page, and it actually is a course that they've created that helps you learn little tricks that might help you address somebody who you think is suffering from depression, and also just where to send them if you think, hey, my friend's suffering from depression, but I don't want it to be really awkward and call them out. You know, what can I do? And this helps you learn that. In terms of UMass, they do all of that stuff and then some. Again, stepping the bar up, showing URI that we need to think big. But UMass actually has a whole workshop where they teach you mindfulness and how to really work on meditation. And they help their students realize that 10 minutes of meditation a day can take away any stress that you have and help you be more positive in life and just kind of get over those little speed bumps that might slow you down throughout life. In fact, UMass also has their own specific counseling center just for intercollegiate athletes as well, because they understand that athletes go through different things, and they actually have a specific counseling center to help with depression that student athletes may feel when rehabilitating from an injury and feeling like they may be pulled away from their team.
So we also wanted to consider ways that depression treatment supported by literature might be adapted to college programs. Aerobic exercise has been found to be very beneficial. Peer support groups can increase treatment adherence and help feelings of social isolation be diminished. Primary care screenings can also be used to reach people who might not go into a counseling center, might not even be aware that they have a mental health problem. And promotion of healthy roommate relationships has been shown to decrease cognitive vulnerability that can actually lead to things like depression and almost a contagious spread. And then we suggested some ideas last time we were here that these treatment strategies might be incorporated into pre-existing programs on campus, such as intramural sports, linking health services and counseling, things like that.
So obviously, as people know, URI 101 has been one of the major focuses of our entire project because we think it's a great way to implement the change that URI needs to do. One, obviously, it's required for incoming students. You actually need it to graduate. I'm sure we all filled in that information on our graduation checklist. But one thing that really showed us that this is the great way to go is that in our survey, which we'll talk about in a moment, to the question that do you think depression should be talked about in URI 101, we had an astounding 86% of people say yes, while 6% were unsure and only 8% said no. So for us, that was a huge, huge red flag that this needs to be addressed. Also, it's taught by mentors specifically, so that's a great way to help the mentors maybe get a little bit more information so they can help risk evaluate those students that they have in their 101 courses, because that's when you're adjusting to college and those onset feelings might start. So in terms of our survey, it was, I think, a resounding success. We actually had 100 students take it in 5 days. We hit the maximum. The range of conversations that were started from it was, what symptoms do you think people have in terms of depression? What helps alleviate those causes that you may suffer from depression, as well as how well equipped do you think you are to help somebody who may have depression? And actually a large number of statistics said that students right now feel like they have little to no preparedness to help another student who may be suffering from depression, as well as to help themselves.
So like Erin said, we included a number of questions in our survey, which we can't cover all of them here. We found, for example, females more knowledgeable about depression symptoms, that time concerns are most pressing for students regarding whether or not they seek counseling, and 74% of people know at least one person who's considered dropping out because of struggles with depression. But one of our most influential, we think, questions that was answered here shows how URI students actually, what they found effective in addressing depressive symptoms of their own, ranked in descending order. The green bars represent responses that might easily be adapted to programs, such as the first and third most frequently reported things that students found helpful was exercising and going outdoors. So that could easily be reshaped into an intramural program or something like that. Any kind of exercise that's held outdoors. Playing with animals was also found to be helpful. The university already brings therapy animals to campus. They might consider doing that more often. And it's also worth noting, as you can see with the red bar, that about only 15% of people found URI counselors unhelpful. It was actually the second to last least helpful thing that students found on campus, aside from seeking care off campus, which we think is pretty concerning and definitely calls for some kind of change in the way that the counseling center operates. So we have some suggestions for URI. They definitely have options. Again, we think that a counseling center-led exercise program, such as one that the University of Connecticut does with their yoga program, would be very beneficial. It's a little surprising, but students seem the most receptive to the idea, and ultimately that is what is most important with treating depression. We also think that counseling center dissatisfaction should be investigated further. Students reported in descending order that individual counselors could have been more helpful, that the counseling center could have follow-ups, and maybe that students could have found out or been told about the counseling center sooner. So now I want to look into how to improve that. And again, the school might also consider incorporating treatment into existing programs, such as promoting healthy eating at the dining hall, not only for your physical health, but also for your mental health. And again, something like bringing therapy dogs to campus more often.
Another suggestion would be peer support groups, which instead of being run by a professional would be run by peers itself. Helps lower the cost for the campus, as well as helping students be able to help the peers around them, because obviously we're going to have much more interaction than you have with a faculty member, as well as including it in URI 101, great resource to address all of the students. Just final takeaways here. Obviously we don't have a lot of time to divulge into everything, but we've talked about what depression is, the overall effects, what schools around us are doing, how URI can step their game up a little bit, as well as the issues that the URI students themselves have addressed. Obviously, if you have any other questions, please feel free to come up and ask us, all right?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rena Varkey,
I'm Brian Hopkins.
I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Ethan Flynn.
and today we'll be discussing, is college worth it? So, is college worth it? This is a question we've started to hear more and more, and there are arguments for both sides. In the cartoon, you can see arguments on both sides. Why should you go to college? So you can get a degree and earn more. But will that earnings just be going to paying back student loan debt? So we've heard about issues with retention rates, the debt bubble, depression, the skills gap, etc. So we've heard a lot of the negatives. But as econ majors, we decided to tackle this question the best way we know and to do this as a cost-benefit analysis. So in our project, our team examined whether college is worth it by looking at the costs and benefits associated with the college degree, and I'll start by speaking on costs. So, in a small interview of URI students that I conducted, when asked what the cost of attending college is, aside from the few responses of whatever tuition is, the resounding response that I received was, I don't know. Though my favorite response by far was the person who said, I don't know, but it's too damn high. So when it comes to the value to doing a cost-benefit evaluation of college, the cost of attendance must be looked at first. In order to look at what the benefits are. And so for our purposes, this consists of looking at tuition and non-tuition expenses, the net price of college, and student loan debt. So as I talked about in my last presentation, this measure of looking at tuition and non-tuition expenses is often called the sticker price of attendance. And this is the total cost, and this includes cost of books, housing, food, extra fees, etc. And this chart once again shows the breakdown of tuition versus non-tuition expenses, and one can really see the way that non-tuition expenses can nearly double the cost of attendance, especially at a four-year public university like URI. So when looking at URI's total cost over time, one can see how total costs have increased quite a bit. And for students who don't receive any financial aid, this is the amount that they are paying. So for out-of-state students, this has been a 36.85 percentage point increase and a 25.96 percentage point increase for in-state students. However, looking at just total cost does not give you the full story, and especially since Time Magazine has reported that over 45% of schools actually underevaluate what cost of living on campuses or in towns nearby college campuses are. And so the best indicator of looking at price is the net price of attendance, since 60% of students do receive aid in some way. So the net price of attendance is defined as the difference between the total price of attendance and any grants or federal aid received by the student. Net price varies by income level, and this shows that even at the same university, cost of attendance is relative, just like values will be, and we'll show how that works out later. So cost of attendance varies by income level and the amount of funding a school has. So it is interesting to note that the net average cost of attendance at Brown University is actually less for all income levels other than the top bracket than it is at URI. And this same disparity exists for Yale and UConn, Dartmouth and UNH, and lots of other schools throughout the country. So net price is the value closest to what students are paying, and therefore the best to use for comparisons and looking at cost differences over time. So, in fact, for the country as a whole, net in-state tuition at public universities increased by 58% between 1991 and 2013, and at private nonprofit universities, this increase was about 25%. So for URI specifically, in-state students at URI, there has actually been a 47.52% percentage point increase in net price over time, relative to only a 25.96 percentage point increase in total price. So this next slide, though, shows the way that income levels have stayed relatively flat compared to net and total price of attendance. Over the past 20 years, household income has only had about a 7 percentage point fluctuation and is now only 2 percentage points higher than it was in 1995, while net price of college tuition has had a 67 percentage point increase in that same time frame. In 1995, the net price of in-state public school attendance was only 16.06% of median income, but last year it was 26.32% of median income for in-state public school attendance. So this is why the value of college is so highly contested, because income has not risen the same way that cost of attending college has, and this has led to increased burden on the family and the student, and then this then leads into our last measure of looking at costs, student loan debt, and the way that has increased over time. So to help cover the cost of college, about 70% of students take out loans, and student loan debt in the US has reached a high of 1.2 trillion. As we heard about before, there is a student loan debt bubble, and last year for the class of 2015, the average student loan debt that they were graduating with per person was $35,051, a value 3.5 times greater than what it was in 1993. Additionally, due to stagnancy in starting salaries, students are now taking longer to pay back their loans, with the average being about 21 years for repayment. So therefore, when we take these values and we pair them with the 4.29% interest rate, which was the rate given to 2015 undergrad students for federal loans due to student loan reform under the Obama administration, when we model this out, we can find that students will be paying over $18,187 in interest alone, so that's $52,234.49 in total. And that's with the generous assumption that the loans that they're taking out are subsidized federal loans and that they don't start accruing interest until after graduation. And of course, this value is just less than $1,000 less than the median family income of last year. So we can now see that when total price, net price, and student loan debt are put together, cost of attendance for college is quite high. That going beyond this, I don't know, there really is a high cost of attendance. And costs are relative, but especially when compared to household income, they're undeniably high. So it's now from this perspective and mindset that we can do an evaluation on return on investment. And we'll now hear from Brian on certain benefits of college.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the benefits of college and also the postgraduate plans. To start with, let's go with the benefits. The benefits of college, there are many different reasons students should think about going to college. There are higher job opportunities, higher salaries, bigger health advantages, and there's also many more. With the job opportunities, college gives students a better chance for success in the future. So while many employers have strict educational requirements, college degrees offer students a wide range of jobs in their respective fields and flexibility to change the job locations. The big thing now is networking as well. In this day and age, it's even easier to search for job employments with social media and technology increasing like crazy. More business-oriented network services such as LinkedIn are invaluable for people who want to find jobs or pretty much just connect through work fields. And with over 433 million registered users, LinkedIn, it's changed the game because it allows users to upload their own resumes and apply through jobs just through the website. And many times when you go into interviews with prospective employers, they don't even print out your resume. They just have your LinkedIn profile ready to go on a computer printout. Especially at LinkedIn, with the private networks established through their colleges, people that don't go to college, they don't get these benefits that other people who do go to colleges get. And each college is different through their alumni system. And this brings us to higher salaries. So higher educational attainment is associated with higher median earnings. In 2005, the National Center of Educational Statistics did a study, and as you can see, each level of degree type is correlated by the median annual earnings, with obviously master's degree at the top. As you can see, these are the stats for 2013. There's master's, bachelor's, high school graduates, and high school dropouts. And it's really interesting to see that just in 2013 alone, men with bachelor degrees made $34,600 more than men who dropped out of high school in 2013. And women were right behind them. They made $34,000 in total, more than women who dropped out of high school. And this brings us to life expectancy, which increases as the level of education attainment rises as well. In a study done in 2006, men with bachelor degrees were found to have 9 years on average more than men who didn't complete their high school diploma. And through that 10-year period from 96 to 2006, the men who didn't have any high school diploma or didn't graduate with one were the only ones who didn't see an increase in their life expectancy over those 10 years. But funny enough, for women who had, they had an eight-year increase from people with bachelor degrees without in 2006. Through the 10-year difference, it was only women with bachelor degrees and higher and no high school diploma at all who increased in their life expectancy. The Preston curve was originated in 1975, which was created by a man called Samuel Preston. And he compared the relationship between real per capita income and life expectancy. This is a graph of the curve. He used 3 decades from 1900s to 1930s, all the way to 1960s, and then compared them. And then this graph has up to 1990, 30 years after. And as you can see, that the what he found was that the balance held true throughout the years. So as time goes on, it'll be interesting to see how this Preston curve will fill out and move on in the future. So what does this mean for the workforce? Education correlates with higher life expectancy, and this increase in life expectancy leads to an older labor market. So this is, in 20 years, from the 1994 to 2004, the median age of men rose 4.1 years and women rose 4.3. Notice how the median age of the labor force is expected to keep increasing in 10 years in 2024, and then it's impossible to predict when this is going to finally hit the boiling point. Nobody has been able to find out when the point is going to peak. So this could keep rising until it becomes an actual issue into the 50s and who knows, maybe even the 60s beyond that. Now looking to postgraduate plans, because every college student has to realize what comes after. And one of the big things is unemployment. Unemployment is when a person is actively searching for employment yet is unable to find work. And it's usually described as the unemployment rate, which is, unfortunately for us, constantly it's been increasing, rising for quite a while now. And in the New York State Federal Reserve Bank in 2010 reported that, or 2012, excuse me, reported that 10% of 22-year-olds, college graduates who were unemployed from 2009 to 2011 was more than half of the 4.5 and 5 percentage points unemployment rates in 1990 and 2000 respectively. And this is important because that is in such a small amount of time, 10 years, 5 percentage point increase, that's big. And that could lead into something even bigger problem through underemployment. And then underemployment has two definitions. It's when you're employed at a job that does not fully use your skills or abilities, or it's when you're employed at part-time work when you can be working full-time. There's three causes: the development of the economy, particularly during recessions, and this pretty much just says that the better the economy, the less underemployment. Unemployment comes into play here, and this is where the higher unemployment, the worse you'll do, the worse the economy, the more underemployment. The second cause is advancement of technology, which machinery takes away jobs from capable people, and the more as technology becomes more sophisticated in the future, it'll be harder to find jobs. And the status of the workforce depends upon the size. The more workers there are, decreases the more opportunities to work. And then because of this, workers will look for underqualifying jobs just to survive. And this causes the cycle. In 2012, or February 24, 2009, President Obama had a first joint address to Congress. And in this was his goal that he wanted to make the United States have the highest proportion of college graduates in the world by 2020. And to accomplish this, 8 million more young adults would need to earn college degrees, and the projected proportion of college grads to increase by 50% in this time frame. What the state or the nation mandated, or the college graduation rate for the nation was 40%, and he wanted to increase it to 60% by 2020. That is a huge jump. It's not easy. It might not even be feasible because it would decrease the value of degrees, flood job markets, and make it harder to find a job. And this table right here just shows that through 1992 to 2008, 552,392 college graduates, people who graduated college, still had to take a job in retail work. They added to the retail workers pool just in those 16 years alone. So, and this is even more than the 530,000 original pool of college graduates working. So if Obama went through with this plan, even more people would come into this. And please note that it's 2008, which was 8 years ago. So what the number is now would be staggering. With Obama's plan for 2020 still in motion, it would increase the number of college graduates taking occupations that they wouldn't normally have to take. And though it is important to note that the national college rate has only risen from 244% from 40 in 2009, and it would the United States would have to have a graduation rate up to 67% from now to actually make it to this goal, and that's just unreasonable. It won't happen. So what is a degree worth when it comes down to it? There's two things that it comes two things: the type of degree earned and the field of study. Because I went through the type of degree earned earlier, Ryan's now going to go through the field of study.
All right, so as Ryan just said, we kind of went over more of general degree, what the value of that is. I'm going to take more of a specific look specifically at how a major impacts the value of an education and what some implications might be for the future. So basically, after a quick review of the literature, to put it really simply, there's two types of value essentially that you can derive from a major. One, financial, things like earnings and employment, basically salary you can expect to earn, things like that. And then the second is a lot harder to measure. It's more really about the individual, and it depends on what major you're interested in, different subjects you're interested in, social and psychological benefits, and things like that. So like I said, it's a lot easier to measure really the financial value that you gain from choosing specific majors, so that's really what I've chosen to focus on here. And the first thing that I've done, I've created a college scorecard, which comes from data on median earnings, percent of grads employed, and percent of employed graduates that are working full-time out of those that are employed. And those statistics all came from Georgetown University, a 2010 study that they did about basically how majors affect a higher education. So as you see here, I've given each category a score for each major on a scale from 1 to 10. And how I did this was simple. I basically did a frequency distribution. I took the range of the highest and lowest value in each category, divided by 10, and created 10 equal categories. So the first group corresponds with a score of 1, the second with a score of 2, etc. And by adding up, well, we can make comparisons also in the individual categories, which are useful. We can see what's the best for earnings and employment respectively. However, I think the main value of this scorecard is to combine earnings and employment into one score to kind of, show both things together instead of looking at them separately, which I've done in the last column there. You see total score, which there's a pretty big range from engineering, which got a score of 24, and arts, which only got a score of 3. Again, based on this financial data. So beyond just the scorecard, what I've done now, I've created another statistic. I like to think of it as, I call it the utilization score. And basically what I've done is I took the total scores for the scorecard rank, I ranked them 1 to 15, a couple of ties. Same with popularity. There's popularity data based on the percentage of all majors that each major composed. And what I've done to get the utilization score is just subtracted the popularity rank from the scorecard rank. And this is valuable basically just to see how the popularity of each major lines up really with, the scorecard ranking here, or how the score lines up with popularity. So basically, if the most popular majors are also the highest scoring. And I've done a little basic regression analysis. I've graphed a couple of these relationships here. And we've got an R-squared value about 0.52, p-value of 0.02, which means that the relationship is fairly strong and less than a 5% chance that it came from error or by chance. What we see here is essentially that the higher scoring majors tend to be underutilized, I would say, which is, in other words, higher scoring majors have a higher scorecard rank than their popularity rank. And if we go to the next slide, we see the same relationship between popularity and utilization, except in the reverse, basically. So as the more popular majors are basically overutilized. So they're more popular than their scorecard rank would suggest, which is really a problem that I'll get to in a minute. So one last bit of data I've included here is from 2015. It was a UCLA study called the American Freshman. It was a pretty wide study, but basically here they looked at practical reasons for pursuing a higher education. It's not necessarily specific to majors, but since choosing a major is a pretty fundamental part of choosing to pursue a higher education, some of these trends, it's pretty likely that they probably do apply. As you can see here, taking the change from 2012 to 2015, and those who said to be able to get a better job, it went down 3.1%, and to be able to make more money, went down 6.3%. So that really shows, it kind of supports what the previous few slides showed, that students really might not be choosing their majors primarily or really dominantly based off of the financial value that they're going to get. So some implications for the future. Something I kind of thought about earlier, and there was support for it in the literature, although it was cautious and more study needs to be done, was the idea that tuition could be charged differently for different majors based on the expected rate of return. So, I mean, you saw the data before, $75,000 median earnings for engineering. It was $42,000 for psychology. So that's a pretty big difference. And we could help to kind of even out the rate of return and help out those who might not earn as much but still do provide valuable functions for society. And a little addendum to this that I kind of thought about was colleges could almost get bonuses, I would say, when a student meets or exceeds the ROI, and this goes in conjunction with the first point here. Now, I would still expect the schools to decrease their tuition, maybe on across the board, but on a scale so that the lower rate of return majors get a larger decrease. And basically, if the student met their expected rate of return or surpassed it, that would open the door for the college to receive reimbursement, which would be debatable if it should be from the government maybe or the student. That would be a little bit tougher to figure out, but those are two possible ways that we could address these discrepancies, at least in financial value in the future. And now I'll pass it off to Ethan to talk a little bit more about the value of an education.
So Ryan focused primarily on the financial aspect of the financial benefits of getting an education, but I wanted to focus more on some of the lesser known implications of and benefits of receiving a college education. So as an overview, basically these implications can be broken down into two categories. There's social and physical. The social implications are when you go to college, you have an increasing human network. Now that's different from when Brian mentioned social network and online sources, but we'll get into that. You also have increased political tolerance, which, and we'll talk about how that relates to a functioning government. And also a decrease in a particular type of crime called unskilled crime, or unskilled criminal acts, which we'll define later on. Brian also mentioned some of the physical implications before with his life expectancy, but we're going to take it a little bit further and go into how obesity relates to education and also how diabetes relates to education. So we're going to start with the social implications here. First one is to increase the ability to get a job through increasing your human network. Right Management, a career management firm, found in 2010 that 41% of people who found a job did so through human network. Now, they did mention that online sources were growing faster than ever and will probably exceed the human-to-human interaction that we now see. However, as early as 2010, this was the case. So why does networking really matter in terms of getting a job? Well, why does college really matter in terms of growing your network? Going to college increases the size of your network through the amount of relevant connections you make with people throughout your college education. So as you move through college, you make connections with people who ultimately find jobs, and you can utilize them as a contact or a foot in the door to put yourself into that job position in the future. Also, it increases the quality of your human network. So there's people such as professors who work at institutions that you can reach out to who can act as letters of recommendation and also foots in the door for future career opportunities. Next, we'll move into increased political tolerance, which I thought personally was a fairly interesting topic. So going to college increases your political tolerance in two different ways. First, the direct method. It puts people in the proximity of new ideas more frequently. And when you're in the proximity of new ideas more frequently, you become more accessible to those new ideas. Secondly, it increases political tolerance through an indirect method, meaning going to college tends to increase the value people have on tolerance in general, making it more important. And when tolerance is more important, a person is more likely to behave with more political tolerance. So why is this important? Well, tolerance through education is essential to democracy. It opens the way for objective political discourse that is required in order to solve some of society's major issues. I mean, consider the situation in Congress right now. It also makes people from both ends of the spectrum consider ideas from the opposite side as well as ideas from historically marginalized people, which is essential. Finally, for the social implications, we'll look at decreased jail time and criminal acts. So college, as we all know, is essentially an investment in human capital. And through human capital, we can find pathways to more cost-effective sources of income like legitimate jobs. Illegitimate jobs or crime are oftentimes not very cost-effective because of the propensity to become incarcerated. Data from the National Longitudinal Survey from 1995 found that your educational attainment has a negative relationship with committing an unskilled crime such as larceny, drug dealing, and assault. However, interestingly enough, and I should incorporate this, is that your educational attainment had a positive relationship with a small positive relationship with white-collar crimes, but that makes sense because it's through college that you develop the skills and have the access to be able to commit those kind of crimes. So those are some of the social implications, but I also wanted to take a look at the physical implications as well, which deal mostly with health. As a head of household, if you have at least a bachelor's degree, the children that are in that house are less likely to be obese. For males, for males or boys, ages 2 through 19, the propensity to be obese was down by 11%. For girls of the same age group, it was down 7%. I don't know if I need to necessarily emphasize the importance of not being obese, especially obesity in children, but I will. Obesity and poor academic achievement have a positive correlation. So when you don't watch what your kids eat and watch what they weigh, you could be potentially closing the door for future opportunities for them. Also, obesity is linked with poor heart health, which is currently the #1 killer in America according to the CDC. Finally, I wanted to talk about the decrease in diabetes and decreasing diabetes through education. The ADA, or the American Diabetes Association, put out some statistics in 2015 that said 29.1 million of Americans have been diagnosed with diabetes. That's 9.3% of the population. In 2010, 69,000 people died directly from diabetes, and another outstanding 230,000 had diabetes as an underlying cause of death. To put this in an interesting perspective, the Marine Corps has 180,000 Marines. That means on a yearly basis, an entire army of people are dying from diabetes. And death rates continue to rise. As in 2014, 76,000 people died directly of diabetes, and that's an increase from the 2010 statistic of 69,000. However, there is hope. Data from the National Center for Health Statistics shows that there is a strong negative correlation between educational attainment and dying from diabetes. In fact, it's so strong, you are twice as likely to die from diabetes if you leave your education at a high school level than your undergraduate counterparts. This concludes, I suppose this concludes the Professor Mead capstone class of 2016 presentation on higher education. Thank you very much.
Thank you.